Although a career in environmental law can be very rewarding, it does come with its highs and lows. And if you're interested in pursuing this field of law or just wondering about its worth, please continue watching this video as I'm going to be digging a little bit deeper into the pros and cons of becoming an environmental lawyer. Hi guys, and welcome to Arrow for Nature, where we talk about all things law, particularly environmental law, environmental justice, climate justice, and social justice issues. And sometimes we do talk about travel and nature escapes just to keep the sanity rolling here. If you're new, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, hey, it's good to always have you here. If you have been following my channel for a while now, you'd know that I've basically been doing an introduction to environmental law. And now that we've touched a bit on what is environmental law, why we need to protect the environment, how to become an environmental lawyer, and what the job entails, I thought that it was also important to actually do a sit down and share with you some of the advantages and disadvantages of being an environmental lawyer. Somebody actually asked me this question, and I really think it's useful information, especially to those who are considering getting into the field, and also just to sort of like raise general awareness around the field and the job and its pros and cons as well. So let's get into this. The first and most important advantage of being an environmental lawyer is that you are actually fighting for a good cause. It doesn't matter if you're in the public sector or private sector. At the end of the day, you are fighting for people's lives and not just for individuals. So a positive outcome changes the lives of a group of people or a class of people, not just one person. So the impact of such an outcome is very rewarding and far-reaching and something worth the fight. Also, it's also about protecting the environment itself, because healthy ecosystems are very important for the environment. And if you want to know more about this, I actually did a video on why we need to protect the environment, where I go a little bit deeper around this particular issue. So you can go and watch that video for more information around this. But ultimately, you're fighting for a good cause. You're helping to save the environment and people. And this kind of career has also become well respected by virtue of that fact that, it not only helps people, but helps the environment, because ultimately at the end of the day, a healthy planet equals a healthy people. So if the planet is not healthy, people are going to die. So basically that's what you're fighting for, and that's a good cause to fight. Another advantage is that the market is not flooded, so there's always work for you and there's room for you to actually become an expert in this field. So this comes from the fact that not a lot of people know about it, and as I've said in my other previous videos, this is almost like an emerging sector where people are beginning to recognize it, and a lot of services are now needed around that area. So there is a lot of work. If you can come in, you will never be out of work to do, because there's quite a lot of things to do, and you can even start your own law firm and actually have work. You will not struggle, because these have become issues of today. So somebody out there is going to need a lawyer who's going to help them with this kind of issues. So the fact that the market is not flooded makes it more advantageous, because there's room for you to grow. There's room for you to actually have quite a lot of opportunities. Another advantage, which maybe to some might not come across as an advantage, but I do think it's an advantage of being an environmental lawyer, is that practicing environmental law takes a lot of passion. And I think quite a number of people who get into this field are people who are already interested and passionate about the environment, right? So if you already have that kind of passion, you are already on the halfway mark towards achieving success. This basically means that if you're driven by passion, it's very easy for you to go the extra mile. It's very easy for you to reach success, to never give up, because you really know what you're doing this thing for. You have a strong interest in it, you're very passionate about it, and then it drives you. It then becomes an advantage, because you never get to hurt the job that you're doing. Everything is just about, I really want to do this thing. So, and also, if you really believe in what you're standing up for, then it's easier for you to do certain things. So I do believe that a lot of people who get into this area of work, they are very passionate about the work, and you can see it even in the work that they do and how they approach it, and that is very advantageous. I think if you're passionate about something, it's very advantageous to you at the end of the day in terms of everything you're going to do about that particular thing. Another thing is that there is lots of opportunities to learn. And this goes back to the fact that this field is ever evolving, right? There is law around it, but the law around it is ever evolving. So it's like a field of its own, right? And you're constantly having to be figuring out how best to apply the law to environmental issues. So you need to know like which law applies here, which law can I use here, what does the environmental legislative framework actually say about this, but also sometimes you might need to go beyond the environmental legislative framework. So you're always learning all the time. Secondly, you're going to have to work with people from other fields such as scientists and other experts to achieve your goals. And that is always a learning opportunity because they're always going to bring knowledge that is not within what you studied. So you're constantly learning. And I think that learning never stops. So if you get a job or if you get to do something that allows you to continuously learn almost every single day, then I think that is something that is worth doing. There's also various job opportunities because, like I said earlier, it's an emerging field and it's also a highly demanded skill set, especially right now where environmental issues, climate issues are like at the forefront. They are being mainstreamed and everybody's talking about them. So a lot of employers are going to be looking for at least someone to come in and do this kind of work. So corporate, government, NGOs and civil societies, they're going to be doing quite a lot of work around this and they're going to need someone. So that's like sort of allows people to get into the field and create opportunities for more. Another advantage is depending on where you work, you can actually have a good work-life balance when you're doing this kind of work. You know, there's like flexibility working hours. Unless something pressing really comes up, on most days you can actually do an 8-hour workday and do whatever you like afterwards. And you know, you can actually have a weekend without having to work. So I think that is a good advantage if you can actually have that kind of work-life balance, because quite a lot of professions that don't give you that. So if you can get something that gives you that, then it's good for your mental health and also just to avoid burnout. You can actually pick and choose your clients. It's a very specialized field, so it's very easy for you to pick and choose who your clients are. You can even define who you want to represent and the type of issues that you want to stand for. You can actually niche it out and say, for example, I'm going to be dealing with water issues and I'm just going to be representing communities that are affected by poor water quality and activities that have an impact on water. So your clients are going to be those communities, and the kind of issues you're going to be focusing on are anything water related, right? So that means you're not going to be all over the place with other environmental issues. You can actually niche it out, and even when you niche it out, you'll still be able to get quite a lot of work and still get clients, because environmental issues are everywhere. A lot of people are being affected, and some they may not be talking about it because they don't know that it's an issue, or they don't even know who to approach even after they realize that it's an issue. So that becomes a job. So I think that is also an advantage, just being able to choose who your clients are and what work you actually want to do. I think that's a very good thing to do. However, despite all of these advantages, there's always disadvantages to any profession, I think. And in relation to environmental law, one of the disadvantages is that it's stressful and frustrating, especially when you're dealing with the recalcitrant state, okay? It is generally a high pressure job. That is just something you need to know before you go there. It's generally a high pressure job. So if you want to do it, you need to be someone who's able to handle stress. You need to be someone who's capable of working under pressure, because there's always going to be those times where everything just has to happen at once and you have to be centered and be able to do everything as best as you can. So you need to be someone who's able to work in that kind of an environment. It can be so frustrating and stressful, especially when you're dealing with other parties that are not compliant, okay? Like the state, for example, sometimes they're just not a compliant party, and things can drag for so many reasons, which is very frustrating. However, one has to realize that the state is a very important stakeholder in environmental protection. So despite some of the frustrations that you may go through, you need to be very patient and make an effort to really engage with them and create good relationships with the state, because ultimately we all want the same things, right? It's just about negotiating the best way to get there. So in as much as it can get so frustrating, in as much as it can get so stressful, it's about how you manage that, because at the end of the day you need to be thinking about what do we really need, what's the end goal here. So just being able to balance those factors is a requirement in this profession. Another disadvantage, which is very important and quite frankly very disheartening, is that you can become an easy target. We are living in a world where human rights defenders and environmental human rights defenders are being attacked, and not a lot of people like them because they kind of see them as enemies to progress. They feel like, you're just trying to drag things and stop them from doing whatever they want to do, even if it's detrimental to the environment and people's lives. So they see you as a nuisance, and that has created a target on so many people's backs, right? So the target comes not because you're doing what is wrong, but they're just those people who want to silence you for doing what is right, which is quite frankly not fair. It's not right. I don't even understand why people are doing that. And this kind of threat generally exists to anyone who chooses to be a human rights defender, right? And one needs to know this before you commit to this kind of work. I'm not saying this to deter you or to scare you and say don't come and do it. No, I'm actually saying it that because I think it's such an unfortunate thing that comes with the profession, and if you're someone who's thinking of going into that kind of work, then you need to know I'm committing to do this kind of work, but this is a potential threat or potential risk that comes with it. So you need to be able to be someone who is very strong and someone who really believes in the cause. Otherwise, you easily get discouraged and never progress in your career. So I thought it was very important to bring it up here and actually say this is a disadvantage. There's this potential threat that comes with it, but it doesn't mean that you don't have to do it. You need to stay resilient, because ultimately the whole point of fighting around environmental protection, it's about resilience. Another disadvantage, which is linked to my point above, is that not a lot of people are willing to listen or engage with you. It goes back to the fact that environmentalists and environmental lawyers are always regarded as a nuisance. To a lot of people, especially to businesses and government, and to some extent, we are enemies of progress. So they always create a barrier even on very important issues. I think if you follow the news, you'd actually see some of these things popping up where environmentalists are sort of protesting against something or saying you shouldn't be making this decision, it needs to be rescinded. And then someone else comes back and just says you shouldn't be listening to this. I mean, if you're living in South Africa, Minerals Minister does not like environmentalists. And he literally came out on TV saying environmentalists are like colonialists, and they're just there they're just there to stop progress. We want economic growth and they're just there to stop it. And we all know by this time that is not the case. Everybody is working towards achieving all our sustainable development goals. So you can't just say we don't want to listen to this side because this is how we think things should happen. Everybody has to work together, because if you go back to the root of sustainable development, it's balancing out economic interests, social interests, and environmental concerns in order to come up with a way forward. But we're living in a world where people just want to focus maybe on the economic aspect of things, and then they don't look on the social and environmental aspects, or they might look on the social and economic aspects, but then they forget the environmental aspect, which is also very important, because as we have learned so far, development cannot subsist on a deteriorating environment. So you're going to be having to be doing work in a space where quite a lot of people are not willing to sit down and listen to you. Quite a lot of people don't want to hear what you have to say. They just don't want to listen, but you need to sit down with these people. It comes as a disadvantage because it's quite stressful to work in that kind of space where a lot of people are just not willing to listen to you, or they cut you off before you even make your point, or they might give you the space to talk, but they're never really listening to what you're saying because they're just like, damn environmentalists. So you need to be prepared to work in that kind of space and know that it's about resilience. You have to be strong. You need to be very patient. You need to know that ultimately what you're doing is good. So you need to keep pressing on. Another disadvantage, especially to people who do not like a lot of reading, there is lots of paperwork. Just like any regulatory job, there is bound to be lots of paperwork, right? So there is lots of paperwork in environmental law. And this is also because it's legal work, so there's always paperwork in legal work anyway. But also with environmental, quite a lot of the things that you're going to be doing, you're going to be dealing with science. And scientific reports are always voluminous, all right? They are bulky and you need to go through them. So you need to be someone who is not scared of paper, someone who's not scared of reading and going through big, bulky stuff, because there is quite a lot of paperwork that needs to be done. And right now, because quite a lot of people are trying to transition from the use of paper, you're going to have to be doing a lot of this reading electronically. So you need to be prepared, because, like reading something that is a hard copy is quite different from reading electronic copies. So that is one other thing that is just a disadvantage. But it comes with the job, really. I think even if you go to any other legal field, there's just going to be a lot of paperwork, and you need to be someone who loves reading, someone who just loves to do these things naturally, because it's going to be very difficult for you. Another thing which may also be a disadvantage is that you may end up defending people you disagree with. And this happens for the simple reason that everybody has a right to legal representation. So even if you're an environmentalist, you might find yourself in a situation where you now have to defend a client who's going against those principles. And this may happen despite your advice to them. So most of the times this can happen in a situation where maybe you're a corporate environmental lawyer, right? You actually there to help your clients to be compliant with environmental standards. But despite you helping them, they might actually not listen to you and go ahead and do something else. But then now when they're in the pit, they're going to come back to you and actually say, oh, we didn't do this, we did that, and now we're in a pit. Can you please help us? And because they're your client, you're going to have to help them. So that is another situation where, in as much as you may have this passion for what is right, passion to stand by environmental principles, you might actually find yourself in a situation where you're now having to represent someone who's not being compliant, and you have to be their lawyer, and you have to, do what's in their best interest because they're your client. So it's something to be aware of, that, those kind of situations may actually come your way. Another disadvantage, which is quite annoying really, is that sudden changes in the world or politics can really affect your work. And this can happen in either a positive or negative way. But sometimes the negative impact really is frustrating because you have to deal with that. So this can be in the form of, say, maybe a new law or policy that comes into place and threatens all the work that you've been doing maybe for years, okay? Or it could be a certain decision that is made to just frustrate you. Yeah, there are actually some people who make decisions just to get rid of you. So you need to be very resilient. You need to be someone who's committed to the cause, someone who doesn't get easily frustrated, and someone who doesn't easily quit. You need to know that this comes with the job. I need to keep fighting, because any change in politics or in law can really affect your work. So you need to be able to know what's going to happen if this thing changes, what's going to be our plan. So that's part of what you actually need to include in your strategy, right? To say another minister just wakes up today and they decide to do this particular action, and yet we've been doing all this other work for years trying to protect maybe a certain area, and then they make a decision that threatens that. What do we do? What is the recourse? So those are the things that you need to be thinking about, because you can't just accept things as they are, especially if they're wrong. But you need to understand that certain things like that are always going to happen. You're always going to encounter at least one of those things where politics interferes with your work, and you now have to stand up and say, no, we are not doing this. You can actually see certain decisions are being made for political interest. They're not really considering the long-term impacts, and you've been working so hard to protect maybe a certain area or to protect certain people living in a certain area, and then now they make these decisions for their own political interest, and you need to step in. Those things can really happen, so you need to be prepared for it. You need to be very resilient. If you get into this work, resilience is key. You need to be very strong. You need to be someone who just doesn't give up easily because they hit a stumbling block. Another disadvantage, which I probably have touched on earlier, is that this is a career opportunity with poor public image. And this comes from the fact that there is various misconceptions about the field, and this may get in the way of your work. right? So like I said earlier, quite a lot of people, they don't like environmental lawyers, they don't like environmentalists. They just have this thing that you are a nuisance, you want to get in the way of development, you're anti-poor, you're anti-development, why are you here? So that misconception can get in the way of your work. And then also there's a situation where a lot of people, they don't even know about environmental law, they don't know what it's about, they don't know what kind of work that you guys do. They have like this perception that if you're an environmentalist, you're all about, you know, you're like a tree hugger, you're all about protecting the little green frogs in the Amazon, you're all about saying save the trees, you don't care about people. But I think now we know that that is not what environmental law is about. It's very much about the people. It's about protecting humanity, because once you serve the environment, once you serve our planet, you actually protect humanity. Those two things are linked, right? The protection of the environment and human lives, those two things are intertwined. So a lot of people, they don't know that. They just think, oh, those are your selfish interests, just because you care about nature and you care about just seeing the green, you don't care about people, so why should we listen to you? And then they push you away. I mean, there are some people who actually say, hey, we don't eat trees here. And it's true, people don't eat trees, but then at the same time, it's based on a misconception of what environmental protection actually is. And those are the kind of things that you need to be fighting every day. So you're going to have to be fighting for what is right, really positive outcomes for your kids, but at the same time, you're also fighting certain narratives that have been developed about your career. So that can be a disadvantage, because sometimes this can clash and it may get in the way of the work, where you now have to be saying, no, that is not what we're about, this is what we're about. And sometimes it can sort of like tarnish what you're trying to do, because someone may try to twist it and say, no, it's not, they don't even care about people, they're just coming here because they just want to see water flowing. But then that's not what you want to do here. So those kind of things are stumbling blocks that you can hit. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, you need to be very resilient, okay? Like, this career really requires strong people. So even though there's like quite a lot of concerning disadvantages in practicing environmental law, ultimately I do think that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. At the end of the day, you need to remember that this is a fight for the ultimate survival of humans, and human beings cannot survive on a deteriorating environment. So you need to stay strong and fight the good fight. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed it and that it was very informative. If you have any questions or contributions or other things that you want to know around this type of work, please feel free to drop your questions or any kind of things you want to share in the comment section. And if you haven't, please do go and watch my other previous videos on my channel, which form part of this environmental law and environmental protection series.